Fred Bear once said, "Immerse yourself in the outdoor experience. It will cleanse your soul and make you a better person." Welcome to the Rooted Outdoors podcast, where we dive deep into the mental, emotional, and spiritual side of hunting. And now your hosts, Dave Ashworth and Corey Bauman.
Welcome to the Rooted Outdoors podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Corey Bauman. I'm here with my good friend, Dave Ashworth. We're going to do a quick update, but we're not going to take long because we've got an amazing guest on tonight that I'm excited to kind of dive in and chat with and learn from and hear some different perspectives on things. But before we do that, Dave, what's going on in your life, man?
Man, it is a crazy time right now. Just wrapped up turkey season, which was good. Didn't get out as much as I would like, but a lot going on. We're slowly working through our house building process, which is certainly a process, but it's really cool to own our own piece of ground that can be able to hunt on and live on, and just really excited for everything that comes with that. So it's going to be a long year and a half to get in there, but we're pretty excited. So that's taken up a lot of our time. Between that and having a 2-year-old, we're pretty busy.
Yeah. I'm excited to see you on that journey. So it's cool to follow along with that and just see that. And I can't wait to get out to PA and see that piece of land.
I know. Come on, man.
Just stick my feet on the ground there. And
that's right. That's right.
House, so that's cool.
What's new with you, man? Anything? Is that boat floating yet or what?
Man, the boat's making it. So I'm done with the outside. The inside, I started putting like some casting. I put like a casting deck on the front, and I'm like doing some stuff to it. Still working on some things, but like probably like a month. But now everybody's fishing, so like I want to get out there and start fishing with it, So like I'm itching. But we're going on vacation next week. Going to the beach for a week, just spending some time away with the fam, and I'm excited to do that. Do some surf fishing and just relax. So that's about it. That's all I got going on.
It's good, man. Well, let's get into our guest. I'll let you do an intro, although if you're into whitetail hunting at all, this guest does not need much of an intro. I can promise you that, but I'll let you hand it off to him, Corey.
Yeah, we're blessed to have Don Higgins with us tonight. So Don's going to give us a full intro, but Don is owner of Real World Wildlife Products, and he's also a wildlife consultant. Many, many years of experience in the whitetail world. We've been following Don for a long time and kind of caught up on some of Don's YouTube films and things the last week or so. And so we have a lot of questions for Don. But Don, we're happy to have you with us tonight. And I probably didn't do that justice, but tell us who Don is, to give us a little background, what drives you and all that good stuff.
Well, I like to say I'm just a simple country boy. I've been chasing my dreams since I was young. God has just continued to open doors, and as you mentioned, I'm co-owner of Real World Wildlife Products, a wildlife food plot seed and a deer nutrition company. I've been an outdoor writer for 26 years. 26 years ago this summer, I had my first article published in North American Whitetail, and in the years since, I've been published in just about every major hunting magazine. That kind of opened up the door for me to become a whitetail consultant. Some of the readers of my magazine articles liked what they read, I guess, and they actually started contacting me asking if I would visit their properties. So I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, I started that, and it's just snowballed to the point that I can't do them all. I had to bring on a partner in that, Wes Delks, about a year ago, just a great young Christian guy. That I'd known for several years, and he and I had worked together on a lot of things, including my own hunting property. We had a lease together, and someone I felt comfortable with, so I expanded the consulting business through Wes. I got the Chasing Giants podcast, where we talk about what it takes to chase world-class bucks, but at the same time, we use my co-host Terry Peer and we use our platform to help others as well. Terry actually started a nonprofit called Lester's Feet, and we use the podcast to promote that. And what we do is raise money. 100% of those proceeds go to help families who have seriously ill children, medical expenses and things like that. So, I've just tried to use my blessings to help others when I can, and to use my platform to stand up for what's right and share my Christian faith. And, it seems like the more I've done that, the more doors God opens. So I think I'm on the right track. And, sometimes, those negative things come along, and it gets kind of hard to stay positive, but it doesn't take long till I get a positive comment from a listener or something that gets me back on track. So I'm far from perfect, but simple country boy is probably the best way to describe me.
Love it. I love it. Yeah. And we love that approach. We love the approach of, not trying to skirt around certain issues, whether it's, like you said, whether it's politics or faith. And it's important, especially in this day and age. And so we appreciate that. And we'll dive into some of those things for sure tonight.
Sorry, before you jump on your first question, I wanted to add something in.
Yeah.
I know Don didn't mention this, but if you're not familiar with Don, Don has killed some of the biggest whitetails in the world. I mean, Don, how many have you killed over 200 inches now? Is it 3?
Well, I've killed 3 with my bow over 200. But actually, my top 5 bucks average 205 inches.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I wanted to throw that in because we're not, and this is, this is not someone, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but he doesn't own, unless maybe you do now, but he doesn't own, from my understanding, a couple 1,000-acre ranch that he manages for whitetails. It's smaller properties, and getting permission is where he's killed these deer, just like you and I, just like the people listening out here. And so I just wanted to kind of set the stage and put those credentials on the table because he has them. He's done this for a long time. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to grow bigger deer through management, but then also find ways to kill them as well on his property and other properties. And so I just wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit and talk about some of those credentials, because he didn't mention it. I know he's a pretty humble guy, but I'm going to mention it for him. So
for sure.
Well, to expand on that just a little bit, I do appreciate you bringing that up, because a lot of people get the misunderstanding that, I've got this big, private ranch or whatever where I'm killing all these deer. In reality, my top 6 bucks came from 5 different properties. 2 of those came from my own 120-acre farm, and the others came from different properties. And all those other properties were not lease properties at all. They were all just properties I knocked on doors for permission. There was not a food plot or any habitat work done on any of those other properties. So, I kind of fancy myself as the real world deer hunter. Thus the name of the company, Real World Wildlife Products. And, I think that when people first learn about me, they think I'm someone that they can't relate to. But I say, when I do seminars all the time, I truly believe that, anybody listening to this could do what I do, and they could be as successful as me. And, it starts with that passion in your heart. I say, when I shot my first deer was back in 1979, probably before you guys were even born, but 1970. Okay.
77
close.
here. So I was born, but not
okay. But on that morning, I was 16 years old and a junior in high school, and I was crazy about the outdoors. But when I walked up on that first deer I shot, it was my 3rd season, by the way. It took me 3 years to get a deer shot, but on opening morning of my 3rd season, I shot a 9-point buck. And when I walked up on that deer, it's like my whole world changed. It's like, this is what God put me on the planet for. And by the time I was in my early 20s, in the next 5 years or so, I slowly gave up all other outdoor interest. And, I was a big trapper back then. Trapping was my favorite pastime or outdoor pursuit until I shot that first deer. But, I've never been turkey hunting a single day in my life. I've not been fishing in over 25 years. The last time I went fishing, my youngest daughter was about 2 or 3 years old, and she was afraid of the fish. She never wanted to go again, and I never went again. Well, today she's 30 years old. So that's kind of how I keep track of how long it's been since I've been fishing. So it's been over 25 years, but you know, God put a fire in my heart for chasing big deer. And that's what I think about, the first thing when I wake up and when I go to bed at night. And if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm thinking about how am I going to kill that next big deer. And at the same time, as I've got older and matured, I've realized, and it was slow to come on at first. I wasn't quick to understand or accept that people look up to me. And I just always considered myself just another guy, that likes to chase deer. And yeah, I wrote a few magazine articles, but big deal. And I didn't realize for a long time that there was actually people out there that look up to me, and that I had a responsibility, to use my platform in a way that is both honoring to God, but also in a way that could help others. And to this day, occasionally I will backslide, and somebody on social media will post something that's not too flattering, and I'll fly off the handle at them. And that's just the old me coming out once in a while. And I try to do that less and less, but I'm human like everybody else. And again, I think anybody out there listening to this could do what I'm doing. But what they got to remember is that I started deer hunting in 1977. I've been hunting for 45 years, and it doesn't happen overnight. I have just in the last few years, probably the last, I'm going to say no more than 5 years, last 4 or 5 years, have I made my living through the hunting world. And, it took 40 some years. And I say all the time that when I was in high school, the smart kids, they went to college for 4 years, and then they got out and started making good money. Well, I went to the deer woods for 40 years and then finally started making decent money. So long story there, but anyway, I do appreciate you bringing up those deer, and I try to remain humble and not brag, but sometimes to tell your story, you almost need somebody to prod you along and pry it out of you.
Yeah, I've always been told never stop telling your story, because sometimes you feel like it gets stale, or you've told it enough. You've been on a ton of podcasts, but like your story, every time you tell it could affect somebody. Somebody could listen to this and could be inspired. They I don't know if we want to go totally down this road, but they're comparing themselves to people on social media that are putting, hero pics up, and it's just that world we live in, right? And to be able to relate to somebody like you, it gives somebody hope, and they might drive them to go out and really have and just be encouraged, So appreciate
Right.
that. I recently was checking out one of your YouTube films on one. I don't remember the deer specifically, but it was a deer that you shot. It was over 200 inches. I believe it was like 8 years old, something like that. I think it was on your property, and you passed it up for several years. And the first of all, the film was done really well. So loved to watch it. It was done really well. One of the things that really stood out to me though, and I was talking to Dave about this a little bit, we wanted to kind of pick your brain on this, is you shot the deer, you got out of the stand, and you didn't go over to the deer. You went home, and you wanted to share that moment with, I believe it was maybe your grandsons or your grandson, right?
Uh-huh.
And I just thought, man, that was the coolest thing, because Dave and I talk about that all the time. We talk about, you put all this time and effort into hunting and scouting and talking about it and strategizing, and then when the moment comes, I think way too often guys, that it's like the success for them is the kill of the deer, and then it's over, right? But it's like you got to enjoy the moment. And Dave and I have been blessed to have several times like that, where nothing else matters. Once the deer hits the ground, it's like you just soak it in, you spend time, you honor, you respect the animal. And we could really relate to that. And so I just wanted to ask, like, why is that so important to you, right? Why is it so important to you to share it with other people? And what did it meant a lot to you, I could tell. And just by the way the film was made.
Yeah, that was for anybody that's interested, they can go to my YouTube channel, Chasing Giants with Higgins Outdoors. And the title of the video is Mel. Mel is the name of the buck, or what I named that buck. But I've got 2 young grandsons that are 7 and 11 years old right now. One of them just turned 11 over the weekend. And they look up to me and the way I looked up to my grandfather. And when I think back about my own grandfather and what an impact he had on my life and the way I am today, I realize that I'm going to have that kind of impact on these two young guys. And you know, when I'm long gone, like my grandfather's, been dead for almost 30 years now. Um, when I'm long gone, I want them guys to, my grandsons, to remember me the same way that I remember my grandfather. And my grandfather wasn't rich by any means, but he, he just had values that he instilled in my brother and I that we carried to this day. And I want to have an impact on my grandsons. And when I shot that deer, I had no idea how big it was. I knew he was big. Don't get me wrong. I knew he was 200 inches. And a few months later, I took the deer to be officially scored, and it ends up that he is the number 6 all-time typical ever killed by a bow hunter in history. And I had no idea about that, but I knew he was big enough that those grandsons were probably never in their life going to be able to walk up on a 200-inch deer. And I hope they do, and they may blow my record away. But there's not a lot of deer hunters that get to walk up on a 200-inch deer, and I wanted those boys to experience that because I knew they would remember it for the rest of their life. And anytime we can make an impact on others, a positive impact on someone's life, whether it's the Lester's Feet Foundation that Terry started and that he and I promote, or it's just through our actions. We never know who's watching us and what kind of impact just our actions are going to have on a total stranger even. So if I can purposely have an impact on my grandsons, I'm going to do that. And I mean, that's a moment I'll never forget, and I don't believe they will either.
Oh, I'm sure they won't.
One of the things as well in that whole film that kind of I gathered from it was, and Corey touched on it briefly, but just the amount of respect that you have for these animals. And I'm sure that through that process and going through it and inviting your grandsons into that, part of it was to teach them the respect that we need to have for these animals. For you, like, what does respect for these animals that we're chasing and ultimately get to kill, what does respect for those animals look like to you?
Well, I was extremely blessed when I was younger to have positive role models in the hunting world. Alan Foster was a mentor of mine. He's 10 years older than me, but he and I worked the same job. When I got out of high school, I started a job where Alan worked, and he just had a positive impact. And Gene Wenzel was hugely instrumental. When I was in my late teens and 20s, Roger Rothar, fantastic whitetail bow hunter that's passed away. I corresponded with him many times. And the thing about these guys that I say all the time, that the hunting industry lacks good role models. And I don't mean that in a negative way towards people that are involved in the industry today, but what I mean is the role models that I had when I was young in the hunting world, Alan Foster, Gene Wenzel, Roger Rothar, and there's a few more. Those type of people are not around today. And what separates them from the role models I see today is their respect for the animal. That they respected whitetails as a species, but they also respected every individual animal. Every deer they shot deserved a quick, humane kill. When they took photos of that animal deserved to be displayed in a respectful way, not in the back of a truck full of beer cans with some guy sitting on its back, And what I find really interesting today is that, I'm not afraid to take a stand. Anybody that follows me at all on social media, some people call me opinionated or whatever, and I'm fine with that, whatever they want to call me. But a lot of the negative I get is because I'm taking a very strong ethical stand on something, And a good example is just photos, trophy photos. Once you shot a deer, how you display that deer. I've made social media posts, and I'm not picking apart a specific photo that I seen or anything, but I'm like showing an example of a good, classy trophy photo, and I'm suggesting to others that, hey, when you shoot a deer, for clean it up. You don't want his tongue hanging out and he look like a bloody, gory mess. Display that animal with respect. And man, I get bashed sometimes so hard. And then when it comes to the equipment, archery equipment especially, I'll take some strong stances. And it's not that I'm looking down on anyone. I believe in everyone's freedom to make the choice of equipment that they want. I know there's people using equipment that I'm against that feel just as strongly that it's an ethical piece of equipment as what I use, and I respect that. But I think that it goes back to the idea that I've been really reluctant to embrace the platform I've been given, because I don't see myself as being better than the next guy. I just see myself as being another everyday guy. But at the same time, I try to be that kind of role model that Alan and Gene and Roger were to me. And it's just not accepted today the way it was back then, 40 years ago. Those guys could preach the same thing that I'm preaching today, and it was well accepted. And I think a big part of that was social media was not around back then. So social media has given everybody a platform, no matter how inexperienced or what that they are. They can still get on their keyboard and have an opinion and blast it out just as well as I can. And that's kind of changed the world. But I just don't think those lessons in regards to respect for the animal are as well received today as they were 30 years ago or 40 years ago.
Yeah, we just talked recently on a podcast about, you just touched on it, like, you have a responsibility now that you have X amount of followers, or like whatever you want to call it, your followers, your fans, your platform, like you have a responsibility that people are watching, right? To stand up for those things. And we appreciate that. I was talking to Dave a little bit before the podcast, and we were kind of running through some of these things, and we remembered this. And I don't know if you even saw it. I don't know if it was maybe a year ago or so. There was a video going around of a kid. I don't know how old he was. He's a kid, shot a buck, and I don't know, maybe his 20s. I don't know. Anyway, he shot a buck and they smashed a beer can over his antler and like broke the beer can, blasted it everywhere. They're laughing, giggling, like pouring beer on this deer. And I told Dave, like, that like breaks my heart when I see, like, when you see stuff like that, right? And we probably should have done more. Like, I don't know what to do at that moment, rather than message the guy or whatever and call him out on it and that kind of stuff. But like when you see that, that's the respect, right? Like it only takes a second for somebody that's watching that and sees that to go, that's what all hunters are, versus you spending X amount of years building it up. That's what's so frustrating. It only takes a minute to break the trust of somebody who's starting to gain trust in hunting and understand it and why we do it. It just stuff like that. There's no place for it, right? And we've got to take a bigger stand on it. I don't specifically know what that is for us. We're gaining a platform and followers and things like that, but we do have an obligation to do that. I agree with you 100%.
Well, the world is full of evil, and I did not see the video that you just described, but I've got to assume that young man did not have a positive role model teaching him any different. And, even back when I grew up in the 70s, I had friends that were crazy about the outdoors too. But I recall some of them, their father was basically teaching them how to break and bend game laws and my dad was just the opposite. My dad was like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And if you want to try to twist the rules, we're not going to do it at all. You're not even going to be going to the woods hunting. So, and it wasn't just with deer hunting, it was with everything we did. And I think really it comes down to, the problem I see with the world today, and I've said this many times in seminars, it's men. It's men that are not living up to their biblical obligation to be the head of the family not just provide for their family, but to provide an example for their sons and daughters to grow up. They're teaching their sons how to treat ladies, and they're teaching their daughters how they should be treated and what to expect. And they're not doing it by sitting them down on the couch and having talks with them once a week. They're doing it by the example they set. And I'm just guessing that this young man that you're talking about, he did not have a positive example as far as an outdoorsman set for him. And as far as guys like you and me trying to set the positive example and to stand up when we see things like that, I can tell you that every time that I stand up for something like that, I get blasted. Somebody's going to come out and they're going to blast me, but you know what? I go right back at them. Yep. And, I have people throw out at me that, as a Christian, I should be turning the other cheek to all this stuff. But at some point, you gotta address evil head on. And that's probably what makes me a little different than some Christians, is that I'm probably more like, Peter, when they cut Jesus' ear off, he's ready to do battle. and Jesus did calm him down and healed the guy's ear. But I'm not passive, put it that way. I'm ready to do battle. If you want to do battle, well, let's do battle. Because I just feel that, God's given me this platform for a reason, and it's not to sit back and be passive. It's to be bold and to stand up and say, hey, that's not how we display a deer we shot. We need to show them more respect. And you do it in not a mean, degrading way. You do it with respect to the person and just give them something to think about. Because one thing I've seen in my own life is that, seeds were planted in me years ago before I ever became a Christian. And I talk about my grandfather earlier, and that came from my grandfather. And it took one of the saddest things for me is that he didn't get to see that seed grow. I mean, he was gone before the time that it really flourished. And I'm sure he's looking down today with a big smile on his face. But one of my biggest regrets is that he didn't get to see what I did with the lessons that he taught me and the platform I've been given.
Yeah, I think to your whole point, a lot of times the minority is the loudest. And so people like you who are out here speaking, you're going to get people that are going to blast you. I feel like in today's day and age, no matter what you say, like, you're going to get blasted for something. That's just how it's going to go.
Yep.
But you don't know, you have a big following, and you are making an impact. And for the one person that blasts you, there's probably 10, 50, 100 people that are taking in what you're saying and learning from that. Like, oh, well, Don's saying that I shouldn't do this. And I look up to him. Maybe my dad didn't show me the way, but like, this is a guy that I look up to. Maybe this is what I shouldn't be doing. But they're probably not going to speak up and say something. So you and us and whoever may not feel that impact, right? And sometimes it's that impact that we kind of need to feel it to keep going. But if we can just keep going, there is an impact being made. And that's exactly why we're having conversations like this for Corey and I, but also for people, like you, to have opportunities. I know you have your own opportunities, but to give you more opportunities to speak up and to talk about these things that a lot of people don't want to talk about, to have an impact and to be that role model, especially, this is across the board in any industry, in any way of life. We've been given a passion for hunting in the outdoors, and there's a lot of things that need to be addressed and taken care of in our industry. And so, again, my point was just like, the minority are always going to be the loudest, but it doesn't mean that you're not having a huge impact. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't speak up, even if you're not seeing that impact take place, I guess is what I was trying to say.
Well, Satan tries to defeat us at every turn, and he doesn't want us to hear the praise from those who believe in the message that we're delivering. He wants us to hear the haters and the naysayers, and he wants to derail our message. He wants to derail our platform. So we just got to stand bold. And we got to keep in mind that we are making an impact, and we're planting seeds that, just like the seeds my grandfather planted, may not be seen or may not grow for many years, but at some point they will.
Yeah, for sure. Not switch gears, but maybe just switch gears a little bit. So one of the questions we wanted to ask you is, and you mentioned the word success earlier on when we were kind of opening up the podcast. For someone that has shot, 3 200-inch deer, 200+ inch deer, I think success is defined differently for each person. And I think each season it might be defined a little bit differently. What does Don Higgins define as success? How does that change? How does it, what does it really mean to you? Like, what does that word mean to you? And how do you define success in all of your experience and where you're at and you sit today? What is success to you?
Well, to be honest, success today is having an impact on others. I've had just a few young men reach out to me and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I got baptized last week and you was a big reason for that. Oh. That means more to me than a 200-inch buck on the wall. And for a non-believer, that's probably very difficult to understand or even accept. But I'm telling you, when a young man, here's a good way to explain it. So I go out and I kill a giant buck, and I'm super proud of that deer that I just shot. And I'm not just talking me, but I'm talking any of us, but specifically me. I shoot a big buck. That buck means more to me than it means to anybody in the world. Even my family and friends who are happy for me, it means more to me than anyone. But as time goes by, that feeling of accomplishment or whatever, it slowly fades away. The giant bucks that I shot 10 years ago don't mean as much to me today as they did the day I shot them. But when a young man tells you that he just accepted Christ and got baptized because he's been watching you, not only did you change his life, but that's a change that's something that can impact generations. Mm-hmm. He can have an impact on his kids and his grandkids, and they can in turn have an impact on their kids and grandkids, and positive. I mean, it's beyond financial. It's eternity for every one of those folks. And when that's the ultimate success for me today, is to have a young man send me a private message or email, whatever, and say, you know what, I just got baptized and I want you to know you was a big reason for it. And I'm telling you what, that makes everything that you go through with the haters worth it, because you know that you're at least reaching a few.
Yep. And some people might think that this is a stretch, right? But we know it's not a stretch. Like, there's a reason that 200-inch deer, the story of Mel, like that whole YouTube thing was done. It's because somebody's going to watch that. One of those kids, one of those guys watches it and they reach out to you. That whole thing, and there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. And that God put it there for a reason. And that's just, that's just, it's amazing how that works, but that's how it works.
I've had people actually suggest to me, and I've thought the same thing myself. I just never had the guts to say it, but I've had people suggest to me that the reason I've been so successful as a deer hunter is God likes what I'm doing with my platform and he wants me to keep it going. So he's leading these big bucks by me because he knows that I'm going to use the opportunity to spread the good word. And I thought the same thing myself, because I look at some of the things I've done in the deer woods, and it's like, I couldn't have dreamed that. I couldn't have dreamed it. And yet there I did it. And what I've been able to accomplish has gone so far beyond anything that I could have dreamed a few years ago. And today I tell young people to dream big, dream as big as you possibly can, because I'm telling you, your wildest dreams, God can blow them away. His reality is so much bigger than your dreams. And I'm living proof of it. I've experienced it. No way did I ever dream I would shoot 3 200-inch deer. No way did I ever dream that people would look up to me and want to hear what I have to say.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to hear from somebody who has had so much, quote unquote success of killing these deer and getting articles published and starting companies and doing all of these things that the world would see as successful. And they would look at you and say, well, just pick one, right? You can just pick any one of those and look at that as success. And your answer to success was none of those. Had nothing to do with any of those. It's the impact that you're having on people that's success for you. That is truly refreshing. I know that this might be a bigger question, but I would love to hear some of like your faith journey and how that became such an important, like, how did that become so important to you? Like, how did you come to know Christ, and why is that like the biggest success that you can have is sharing that with other people? How did that become so important to you?
Well, my journey is probably the most unique you'll ever hear, and I can't put my finger on the exact day that I invited Jesus into my heart, and it was a life-changing event. I go back to I start with my childhood. Both sets of my grandparents were Christians, went to church every single Sunday, and that had an impact on me really early on, and that caused me to be a believer. I never ever in my life doubted that there was a God. But when I was like in my late teens, well, actually mid to late teens, I actually got in probably more trouble than any three kids that you know of. And it was, I guess I was just slower to grow up than most of the kids that were my age and grew up at the same time I did. And then when I met my wife, she came from a home with a Christian mother that drug her to church, every Sunday, every Wednesday night. And when we got married, we got baptized soon after. We started going to her church, and but it was really and this ties right back into deer hunting. And I was a believer, but it was like I was lukewarm, if you will. I was a lukewarm believer. And in 2004, I'd always had a dream that I wanted to kill a world-class buck. I was just crazy about deer hunting. Like I said, from the time I was 16, I walked up on that first deer. Deer hunting was my life. And I started writing magazine